everyone. I hope this finds you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey. Absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to introduce all of you to composer and lyricist Peruquois, a remarkable worldwide icon and a profound healer of women who has been touring the globe since 1997. Peruquois' life has been filled with fascinating and transformative experiences of grief to healing to rebirth. The first experience that began to shape her unique character and gifts occurred when she was 3. Her father drowned in a fishing accident, and her motto became, "Love and live now as the future may never come." Another transformative experience occurred when she was 11 in the form of major experimental surgery. Both of her legs were cut above her kneecaps and then reattached in a botched surgery designed to cure a genetic hip rotation. Despite the pain and extreme peer rejection, this strengthened her will for life and love and firmed her commitment to overcome any issues that life was to throw her way. At 18, Peruquois rejected her mother's pressure to become a psychologist and honored her dreams to become a jazz vocalist. By 23, she was a bright star on the Australian jazz scene, but felt somehow unfulfilled. And through a profound transcendental experience, she found intuitive singing, which spurred people to call her the voice of Mother Earth. She later spent 11 years as an apprentice and one of 7 wives to a Native American medicine man in the mountain deserts of New Mexico, where she received a vision that revealed that her healing voice and profound wisdom would one day inspire millions of people to fall back into love and return to harmony and balance. Incredibly, she united all the wives in a circle of trust, and together, in a powerful healing ceremony, they healed him from bone cancer, saving his life. After that healing ceremony, a new craft and even more unique skills opened up inside of Peruquois. In 1999, Peruquois went through yet another near-death experience when, after 40 hours of excruciating labor, she delivered her only daughter. She later moved to New Zealand and committed to a new partner who was an awakened tantric master, and she became inspired to create a new set of practices for women to open up to their sensual nature. And of course, there is more. I'm looking forward to talking with Peruquois about many things, including her profound transcendental experience, her experience saving the Native American medicine man and the unique skills that opened inside her, her near-death experiences, her second partner who was an awakened tantric master, her exploration of women's sensuality and inner essence, her unique high-low overtone singing, and her courses and events that are freeing women from emotional trauma, self-doubt, anxiety, limitations, and more. This will surely be a memorable interview with a remarkable woman that is not to be missed. Hi, Peruquois. A warm welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you. Very, very happy to be with you. Thank you for that very big introduction.
Well, you are a very big person. I mean, I received a dossier about you and I said, oh my goodness gracious, how do I get this all to everyone listening to the podcast so they can know the fullness of all of who you are? You're so impressive and certainly very colorful. It's going to be fun to interview you. So let's really, truly. So let's begin with this question as I get everyone in our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience to get to know you. Mm-hmm. How did that major experimental surgery come about when you were a mere 11 years old? What was all that cruel peer rejection about? and what transpired inside and outside of you to transform you in such a positive way and strengthen your will for life. That's the thing I found after I was researching you, Peruquois. I mean, no matter what has happened to you, and some of these things have been very traumatic, you seem to go towards the positive. So I think a lot of people can learn from that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. When I was a young child, it's a genetic hip condition that my mother passed on from my grandmother, etc. So it was known that it was a possibility that it could be any of my mother's 4 children, right? And as you mentioned, my father died when I was 3. And normally by the age of 3, they've already treated this condition. So you can imagine the hips are rolled in. So what they used to do was put you in these calipers as a baby and open the hips by casting the feet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But because of my father's death, you know, all focused, because it was a radical disappearance, in that he went out to sea and he never came back, and he had a crew of 4 men with him. So it was like a radical disappearance. And you can imagine, as a mother, you know, you're just trying to cope with the grief of suddenly your man who you love is there and he's gone, you know? So your focus isn't necessarily on your children, other than we've got to get through this, we've got to survive, you know?
Right.
So my mother missed the window of growth where they could have changed this condition by a more simple procedure. But the doctor said, okay, we've missed the window, so we have to wait until she's older, until the bones get to a certain point at 11. And at that stage, we will take the hips out of the joints and reset them in the joints. And it'll be about a 1-year procedure. Now, all my childhood, what the condition made me do, it was a very aesthetic condition. I walk like a duck, you know, so my hips rolled like a sexy woman, my feet were turned in like a duck, you know. So all my childhood I was teased. So they said to me just before my 11th birthday, you know, we have this new procedure, it's an experiment, and we'd like to try it on you. And instead of taking the hips out of the joints and resetting them outwards in the joints, we're going to cut you above the knees and take the bottom part of the leg above the knee, turn it around, and then put pins in and regrow it. And you'll only be in cast for 3 months this way. And I said, okay, I'm up for it, you know, because a year in cast seemed absolutely traumatic.
And I have to ask you before you go on, how did you handle that peer rejection? I mean, that's devastating for a little kid when people are making so much fun of them.
Yeah, definitely. It was really, really hard. I think that it very much, I had this quality, you know, as a young woman, of being, on the one hand, somebody who could be a leader, you know, and on the other hand, I was highly introverted. And this made me very introverted. Like, I took the energy from these children and I took it inside of myself. And it somehow, maybe I was an old soul, but it somehow matured me, because I could see the cruelty of it. It was as though I was always outside of myself watching the cruelty of it, you know? And I went, this is not correct. I knew it was not correct.
That's a very mature way to approach it at such a young age.
Really. And sometimes I would cry, you know, because I would feel like I was always left to last for any kind of team sports or anything. But mostly I took the position was that people just didn't understand what I was going through. And my salvation was going to be the surgery. And I thought, then I'll be like them. After this, I'll be like them. But that surgery changed me so much. So that maturity actually only grew in me from that suffering, because the next thing they did as a rehabilitation process was they put me in a special kind of rehabilitation center, which was full of only kids who couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't eat. You know, they were basically fully disabled kids. And I went from this position of a normal person to suddenly being totally surrounded by kids who would never walk again, right? So my sense of normalness suddenly went up so high, because I knew I would walk again and these kids would not. right? And the level of compassion that opened inside of me. I was so lonely in this time, in this few months in the center. My mother couldn't be with me. That's a whole nother story. But I went through this very much alone. But somehow it ripened this sense of compassion. And, you know, I even thought, wow, I could help my own school children understand how lucky they are. Because that's what it opened up in me. I am so lucky because I am going to walk again. And these kids are not, you know. And so I arranged a special outing to take these kids to my school whilst I was still in class.
Oh, I love this story.
And so I was like, I went to school. I'm in crutches now. I'm in class. And I've got these kids with these wheelchairs, you know. And the kids at school freaked out. They were terrified. And then after they left, they just completely criticized and were so mean.
Oh,
And
my.
because it scared them. You know, they were just 10, 11 years old. It scared them because they didn't understand why people were like this and just, you know, with no holding them up and things. They couldn't understand what to do. So what it taught me back then was that when people don't understand something, they create a negative kind of fearful response as a protection for themselves, right? And when I saw that, it was like it turned me from being a child to an adult. And I felt so incredibly sad for people that this was their response, this to fear, to the unknown, you know? And I thought to myself, I will never, ever live that way, you know?
But that was such a higher consciousness, Peruquois, because you not only were feeling compassion for these children, but you were feeling compassion for the kids who were being mean. You were understanding them on a different level.
Yeah, definitely. It was like that. And so when I came out of that surgery, I was no longer a kid at all. And at the same time, my mother was going through a very violent marriage breakup with a man who was almost psychopathic. So I was also like trying to hold her as well through the whole experience.
My goodness.
You know? Yeah, so it was a really transformative time in my life. And I never went back to thinking like a child after that, you know? It was like I suddenly became this person that knew I had to find this strength to get through, to get myself walking again, to get myself strong again. And that's what really grew that will, because I was so lonely through the whole period.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Time I knew I could only rely on myself. And of course, that on a positive level, that was great, right? Because it built this incredible inner resource. But on the other side, it built this hyper independence, you know, this strength that kind of almost started to push people away, you know? So it had a negative effect eventually that I had to transform as well.
You certainly did, because you don't do that anymore. You people are coming towards you in droves. That's an amazing story. I want to also ask you, because I know you're originally jazz trained, later integrating, I mean, you're so gifted, later integrating Native American, Indian classical, Middle Eastern, and electronic flavors to your ear-watering blend. So you had a profound transcendental experience through which you found your intuitive singing. And this spurred people to call you the voice of Mother Earth. Obviously, they were no longer as intimidated if they're calling you the voice of Mother Earth. So you want to tell us that story also?
Sure. Well, I mean, you've skipped about a lot of years there, and a big transformation there also, where I really had to stand for myself, even to follow that gift. It wasn't like, oh, I had the gift and it was easy. No, my mother just completely stood in my way the whole time until I was about 17, when I left her wing. And I ended up basically going to conservatorium, which was a miracle because I didn't have any training to get in there, and ended up doing a jazz degree. And that's how I became, you know, the jazz vocalist. And by the time, but I'd had this when I was 17, I had this small, I would say it's my first kind of small awakening, you know, and I was living with a woman who was a musician at the time. So I'd left my mother's wing. And this gift was just in baby stages of waking up. I didn't trust it yet at all. So I was just doing my first singing classes at the age of 17. And she said to me, you know, Peruquois, if you could sing, if there was no limit, why don't you just write down on a piece of paper, who would you sing for and why would you sing? And I did that. And this is a great advice, I think, to any parent, you know, to, if you could say to your children, if you love that thing, what would you do with it if there was no limitations on you, you know? And I said on this piece of paper, if I could sing, I would sing for millions of people, and I would sing not just to entertain them, not just to sing emotional songs, but to actually sing to help to heal them. That was 17. By the time I was 23, I kind of was losing that fabric, that root, you know, that dream. And I had fallen prey to that world of success, you know, that very ambitious kind of.
But I think when you were still so fresh and naive in some ways and clear, I think you got a real vision of your soul purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's amazing was at that time in my life, I had one of the best guides around me. It was my auntie, and she was a psychic. And she was the one that gave me the vision about my life. She received a vision about what was going to come in my life just on my 18th birthday. And this was a phenomenal angle because it held me. And we were doing, it was back in the 90s, you know, so early 90s. So I know, sorry, late 80s. It was back in the late 80s. New Age movement was just budding, you know. We were doing a lot of channelings and going to healing and Reiki sessions and all of this kind of stuff. And back then, psychics said to me, oh, you will fulfill your life purpose this time. Your ancestors have been doing this forever, but they've never fulfilled this kind of mission. And it's yours to fulfill it this time, you know. So imagine it at 18, that was kind of my compass. So by the time I was 23, I'd lost that compass because I'd fallen prey to a very much a young woman's longing, and that is to be loved, to be seen, to be admired, to be sexy, you know, and all of those kind of things, you know. And it created an incredible emotional roller coaster in me, especially coming on and off stage, drinking a little bit, you know.
Of course.
You know, the jazz scene, it's like clubs, men, all of that stuff. But my soul knew something deeper, and it created immense tension inside of me. And so often I would come off stage or the next day and I'd hit the low, that kind of dopamine low, like I'm just completely doubting my life, myself and everything. And this one particular moment, I went to the ocean because I lived right on the ocean in Sydney, Australia, on Bondi Beach. It's a very famous beach. Next to it, amazing, powerful rocks called the Bronte Rocks. There's a big walk around this rocks, very high up over this powerful Pacific Ocean, you know. And I went there and I got to this certain point. I was right in front of a graveyard. And I thought to myself, I could jump, you know, like nothing makes sense to me anymore. I could jump. And I called out to the mother because I had this connection to the ocean. You know, imagine my father had been taken by the ocean, you know, but I'd lived by it all my life by this stage. And I cried out to her as though she was so alive and so present in this wind and these slapping waves against these big mountainous rocks. And I said to her, Mother, I'm so lost. I've lost my way. I don't even know what I'm doing here anymore. You know, please help me. And it was as though the elements just came and spun around me, like the wind, whoo, and the waves and the mist of the ocean. And I suddenly felt this energy pulling me down inside. And I started to emulate this sound I was hearing with my voice. Now, I'm a jazz singer, so I don't think about emulating the wind. I think about scales and songs and everything logical, still by this stage. And I start to emulate this wind. And 2 hours went by it was as though nature had just come up and taken me over, in a sense. And this immense peace came over me. Immense, like all those feelings of death and I'm nothing and I'm hopeless, they fell away. They totally fell away. And that was just the beginning, the opening of the door. So I went to this place every day for 2 weeks. And after about 2 weeks, I had the deepest experience where it's as though I just fell down, like my body just dissolved and my head was prostrated, like my head was right down on the earth, and my head just dissolved into the earth. And I felt this enormous love just rise through my body and at the same time pouring down into the earth. And I had this, it was like a voice, you spoke to me earlier about your experience. It was like a voice, but this was it was not human, just something very vast and big and feminine of nature. And the voice said to me, it was as though she came and my whole body started to become vibration. I understood she was this living presence vibrating through everything on the planet. Every car, every piece of machinery, every human being, every animal, this ocean, this wind, everything that I could hear was her voice vibrating as life, with such a love, with such a profound and enormous love. And for the first time, I felt completely unalone, this feeling of total being held by this mother force, this mother power, so unconditional.
It sounds like you tuned into the collective consciousness, all that is.
Yes, but it was so profoundly feminine,
Oh, that's so interesting.
And I said to her, Mother, if there's any way I can sing for you to be able to open up this, it was like my whole soul and my body is being rerouted to the earth, And if I can sing this vibration of yours into people consciously through their body, they too would know about this profound love, and this profound holding, the sense of the body is totally sacred, and life is totally here, and death is here. I could feel the presence of death at the same time, And so I said, I promise you, Mother, if you wake this gift in me even more, I will sing to wake this gift in other people. Well, I had no idea how I was going to do it. And I was talking to different people that I knew, some Aboriginal people. Nobody wanted to teach me, And then within 2 weeks, my crazy auntie rang me, the psychic from the other side of the country. She said, you have to go to this festival because there's going to be a Native American medicine man. He's touring from States in Australia. So go to this place at this time and you will meet him. And that's what I did.
She's amazing, your aunt, by the way. Like for her to know about all of this and give you these messages, what a gift for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, she was the black sheep of the family. Everybody thought she was crazy, And so I went to this festival and I hear this voice as I come into this huge conference center. Yo, 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 and I hear this voice and I'm following this voice like a trance. And there's this big fat Native American, long hair. He's fully dressed in leathers and beaded, breastplates and feathers. And my whole body is in goosebumps. And when he finishes his performance, he gets off the stage and I wait for him. And he's surrounded by a lot of women because he's very charismatic. And I look at this and I think, okay, he's maybe a ladies' man, But I wait. And I go and talk to him and I say, oh, you know, I'm a singer and I just had this amazing experience. And I think your people have this, you have some sort of secret to help me understand my gift more, you know. And he looks at me and he says, little lady, he says, if you come with me tomorrow, I'll let you get on my stage and you can sing with me.
Whoa.
And yeah.
Wow.
The next day came and I was late and I was trying to sabotage myself. So I thought, he won't see me if I'm in the back of the audience, but I'll get to hear him again. But he spotted me and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to show you that no matter whether you have a voice or you can sing, if your heart beats, you've got rhythm, you know. This little lady's going to get to the stage and she's going to show you that you can sing. Of course, nobody knew I was a jazz trained singer, you know. So
And he did not either, though, did he? He knew nothing
knew,
about you.
didn't know I was a jazz singer, but I had sung something for him when I met him. And so he called me to the stage. I got on the stage, and the next bit, he got 10 people on the stage with native drums, just from the audience, you know, just showed them a heartbeat, you know. And I had an Aboriginal didge playing right down on the floor next to it, you know, and these pulsing stuff. And I was terrified. I was shaking, you know, and my feet just kind of went down into the earth, and suddenly this energy started to rise up through me. And this voice that I had touched by the ocean came up. And I started to sing, nothing that made any sense to my mind. It wasn't lyrical at all.
Wow.
But I started to sing, oh, I don't know what I sang, but it was just like this feelingness. And then he started to sing under me. And this small audience turned into a sea of people when I opened up my eyes and we finished, you know. And at the end, he just hugged me, grabbed me like a bear, and he said, little lady, we have many roads to travel, many people to meet, you know. And of course, that was terrifying because I knew that my life was about to end at that point. Everything that I knew. And of course, that's what he demanded. You know, sometimes when you go through these incredible transformational experiences, there's a part of you that knows your life's about to end as it is. And you want to run, right? You want to say no. You want to say no, this is too much. My life is safer.
And plus you have all the dictates and all the voices of all the people, like your family who thought your aunt was crazy and all, and you have all these people in your life going, are you crazy? No. And something inside of you is so strong about yes, right?
Absolutely. And for me, it was difficult because all my musicians were saying, you're out of your mind. Because this is what he said to me. He said, you know, if you come and be with me and be that apprentice, you're also going to need to be one of my wives. And I was like, what? And he said, so will you marry me? And I said, absolutely. Like, crazy, I'm not going to marry you. He said, and my vision is that all of those wives will carry one child, and those will be kind of special children. I said, you're out of your mind. Like, there's no way I'm going to, you know, come and do that, but I'll come and be your apprentice. And he said, you could come and be my apprentice. He said, but you'll end up being my wife. You'll see. So I thought, as my young woman, very willful, you know, I'll just bargain and I'll do it my way, right? That's what I thought. So I went. And
you were how old now? You were how old now, Peruquois?
24.
24. And he was how old?
He was 50.
Okay.
And by the way, he said to me, I already have 3 wives back in New Mexico, in America, in the desert, and 2 of them are pregnant. And so it was another moment for me of life and death. And I remember leaving his house that night, feeling like I had no choice. It was the weirdest feeling in my life. I had no choice. I was driving the car, it was 3 in the morning, and I thought, I could drive this car off the road. You know, that's what I should do. I should just drive this car off the road. But something inside of me said, no, stay on the road. And I remember ringing him saying, I don't want anything to do with this, you know. And he said, okay, I understand. It's a lot, you know, it's a lot for your mind to cope with. But a week later, I contacted him again. And about a month later, I ended up on tour with him in Australia. And then before I knew it, I was in the desert in New Mexico, 2,000 meters in the high desert, you know, Apache desert country. And
you were in love. You fell in love with him.
And I was totally in love. That was the other thing. When I met him, you know, there's this destiny of the soul. It was as though I had always known this man. I knew his strengths. I knew his weaknesses. I knew his biases. I knew everything about him. But at the same time, he carried this enormous mystery, you know, to me, because he had this knowledge, you know, that was that vein into the earth in a way, that ancient quality. Now, what this man did for me was, instead of just giving me song, teaching me more about this, he basically just put me out in the desert in ceremonies and things, and he said, go learn yourself. He said, go and learn from the Mother Earth yourself. He said, because if it's not directly from the source, then you're just mimicking me. And that was really, really hard, because I had all a Western woman's doubts on me, fear, not to mention the healthy ego I had gathered by this stage that needed undoing, you know, not to mention the level of jealousy. And I had nobody who recognized me as anything anymore. I was no longer this, you know, the jazz singer. I was nothing. I just went into a new world. My old world died, and I was nothing to these women. And they were jealous of me as well. And I was, because you know what it's like when you're a pregnant woman and you see a young, egoic, kind of sexy woman, you're like, get over yourself, you know? And they're not nice about it. It's like, just get over yourself. And that's how I felt, thinking that I would arrive into this world and I'll be welcomed as a sister, you know? And it wasn't like that at all.
They were not, you were unwelcomed.
Unwelcomed.
I want to ask you a very pedantic question, because I think that some of our listeners are wondering, what does a medicine man do?
Okay, no, it's
Let's
very
ask about that. And then I really want to know how you united these 7 jealous competing wives. I mean, that's incredible as it is. And then we can go to the healing ceremony. And I mean, you're fascinating. You're sort of fascinating.
Well, I mean, you know, a medicine man basically is somebody who normally comes from a long lineage of medicine people. And the medicine people are people who carry ancient knowledge. They normally carry very powerful gifts for healing, maybe herbal knowledge, or it might be some power that they carry through the line. And it gets passed on from down through the ancestry. And their responsibility is to then teach other people how to heal themselves, you know, how to be connected to the earth, because it's Native American medicine, right? This is Native American healing pathway. It's the path of life, of restoring that healthy connection to life, right? And so his particular flavor, because everybody has different gifts, you know, some people are psychic, some people are healers. His particular gift was that he was a powerful man of ceremony. So he would take people into the healing ceremony, which is known as the sweat lodge ceremony in America. And he would help restore people, their connection to the soul, right? And sometimes physical healings would happen in the body. But he would also work very deeply with the soul. He was an exorcist. So he took demons out of people. And actually, that was what he did with me on my second date. He invited me to an exorcism to support him in an exorcism. And I've never, ever been more terrified at thinking than watching a man take 2 demons out of one man. And
now, demons are negative thought forms. Is that
so a demon, basically, you know, I mean, the world is not the world as we know it, right? We think there's just human, maybe we think there's extraterrestrial. We definitely know that there's souls that are out of the body that were here, maybe souls that have not been fully here, or have been here and, you know, are still in the ether. It's a multi-level, you know, there's angels, archangels, there's a whole hierarchies, you know, in the world that we don't see with our eyes necessarily. And the demon world is a world where they could have been angels, they could be particular souls, but they normally have become disconnected from that original source of love. So there's a split. There's a split, and they are normally following an agenda to take life for themselves. So they can come into a human being and basically take over the human being's life. But the human being doesn't know that they're there. This is a story known throughout history, right? But if they really take over, they make a total mess of that person's life, normally, you know? And they don't do good things because remember, they're disconnected from that wholesome fabric of love, of unity, of oneness, etc. So they normally have their own agenda. So they don't have a right to be in that person's body and to take over the soul. But normally the person has had a really low point in their life, or they've fallen in love with something like fame or money. And they say, if I could have that thing, I would give anything for that, right?
Right.
This is a classic story, you know?
It's like an invitation to enter.
Exactly. Or they say, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to live anymore, you know? That's also a down point where the soul is the person doesn't want to be in the life anymore at all. And that's also an invitation. So imagine I'm with a man who is about giving people their connection between the soul and the body back to themselves, you know? This is very deep work. It's very rare work on the planet. And so I had a lot of exposure to this kind of worlds that most people do not participate.
Very eye-opening.
Very shattered. When I was 24, my world was shattered. And so this is a part of the pathway of this particular medicine man. He also carried, his genetic memory was totally awake. So his memory went back about 200,000 years. Now that was interesting for me because, and all of his wives, because we were regressed through ceremonies and through research actually of ancient texts to what has happened on the planet, you know, who's who in the hierarchies and why is the planet the way it is today, you know? So there was a lot of that kind of depth of study. And, but for me, it was, my focus was very much about, but how does the voice help restore somebody's body when they're sick? How does the voice help restore that connection to the soul when the soul, you know, that alignment gets very thin, very weak, you know, and the connection is no longer communicating well? How do you restore someone back to that wholeness where the soul and the body are flowing, you know, totally in communion and communication, you know, in health, in harmony? And I think the thing that really amplified that quest for me was he became my husband, obviously. And at one point where I was about, I think 4 years into the marriage, he got very sick with a bone cancer. And
which is interesting because he's healing all these other people and something struck him.
Correct. Yes, because that is one of the great challenges for healers, is when they work a lot with a lot of people, they really have to treat their body like a temple, like totally like a temple, or they're going to get in trouble themselves. Now, he was arrogant and he didn't treat his body as a temple. He was very into hamburgers and smoking Camel cigarettes and all that kind of stuff. But I was constantly pressing on him, like saying, come on, your body's a temple, you know? And I was vegetarian at the time, was that kind of very, how to say, very new age, bright kind of vegetarian, you know? So I was always teased, you know, in the family for being the vegetarian. But, and not that I'm a vegetarian advocate anymore, but what the point was that I was very much about wanting to heal my body, because imagine, this surgery had left me with a lot of pain, you know. It wasn't successful in the sense that I was left with chronic sciatica. you know, from about the age of 18. So I was limping a lot, you know, especially around my menstrual cycle, when my hormonal system was very active, or very actually at the low point in the cycle. I would go into chronically inflamed hips, you know, and I'd be limping like an old woman, you know. And so I was at this stage, that was part of that driving force. You know, how do I heal myself? It was a lot about self-healing, you know. And so through
Did he
this,
help you to heal that? Did he help?
he did, in the sense that I did so much ceremony. I got to a certain point where I wasn't fully healing, and I was very frustrated about it. Very, very frustrated. I'd say I had unloaded a lot of emotional garbage by this stage, and I was becoming more and more myself. You know, a lot of that ego dropped away, and
Right.
a lot of the pain that I had carried from my past was starting to fall away over these years. But I had not really reached that point where I was comfortable yet in my body. I was still in a lot of pain. And at one point, he called me, all the wives together, because I was out in Australia and I was coming back and forward, to a healing ceremony. And he said, you know, basically, you women need to heal me. And you're going to be given the tools to do it, you know.
But before we get to that, were you talking with them? Were you all in peace with all these women yet, or had you? Because you got together to help him heal, but you also brought peace to the group. Did that happen through the healing or before that healing took place?
I mean, in truth, I wouldn't say that I brought peace to the group. I would say that our inquiry, our day by day living together, mothering together, consciously having to navigate through this jealousy and who's more special, who's more gifted, you know, all that kind of human stuff. We had to learn how to be totally honest, totally vulnerable, you know, not hide and talk behind each other's back. So we use this very special method, which is the talking circle method, the talking stick method. And we uncovered a lot of the ugliness that we carried inside towards ourselves, towards each other. And we use ceremonies to do that as well. And we came to some kind of a balance point in that. But when that call for healing was made and we came together, it was like a wake-up call. You're not deep enough. You need to go deeper, you know? If you really want to access the power of the earth, the universe, you know, you're going to have to go deeper. And so we use the preparation for this healing ceremony actually to clean out even more of our own subtle things that kept us from this original flow of love.
Mm.
You know, it's amazing how people can have transcendental experiences, right? And they experience the whole universe, they experience so much love. But when it comes to living in relationship, that, excuse me for being blunt, but that's when the shit happens. That's where it all falls to pieces. Suddenly your transcendental oneness, you know, can
Well, not
all
only
fall.
that, but look at how you were all focused around this one man.
Yeah.
I mean, each one of them felt special to him because he wanted to marry them. So there was a natural, but now you're sharing it with him. And who does he go to tonight, or however that worked out? That had to be all kinds of issues like that.
Exactly, you're exactly right. Very well spotted. And so when this healing ceremony came about, these very powerful songs were given. I remembered some of them, ancient songs of healing. And I think each one of us had to come to that place of total love for each other, for this man, to be able to access the depth. And what it taught me was that when women are divided, we're very weak, right? But when women are unified in their love, we have the access to the greatest healing power that there is. This power of this planet is unbelievable, you know. And we have a doorway, and that doorway actually is our sexual energy, our sexuality. And we are actually built to experience the flow, that very beautiful, passionate life force that rises from the planet. Our bodies are designed to actually experience it, so that it rises up through our feet, through our vagina, through our yoni. I call it yoni, that's the old Sanskrit word for vagina, up through the womb, up through the heart, through the breast, through up and through the mind, up through to the soul. It's a flow, you know. And I had to learn how to switch that on with the voice and with the women, you know, with the breathing, with ceremony and going into trance states. And basically what happened was that energy unified in one moment. This enormous ecstatic energy rose up, and we were able to cure him of this
That's amazing.
in this sweat lodge ceremony. So we were inside. What we created was a womb-like
Was he
space.
there in the ceremony as you were working on him?
Was in the ceremony as we
Wow.
were working on him. And for me, it was profound, because in a way it became the basis of my realization, not my realization in a way, but it's the realization, the power that woman carries in her body to heal, you know, and that her sexuality is actually instrumental in healing. This sexual energy doesn't mean just, not talking about penetration, but the rising flow of this sexual energy through the body is the most healing power that we actually carry when it's unified, you know, when it's conscious, when it's bright and flowing in waves up through the body. So I ended up creating a whole practice out of this after this, and using the voice, and eventually I started touring and going around the planet. First I was in Europe, England, etc. I worked on that side of the world, and I would take originally men and women, but then I turned towards more women, into these kind of chanting healing ceremonies that I'd created. And then eventually something happened where it was very clear for me that I was done with this man. It was that point of a next death, in a sense. Like,
well, you feel a shift. You feel a shift,
yeah,
right?
And it doesn't make sense to your mind, and it's very uncomfortable, because you're going to lose your safety net again, you know, and you're going to be alone again, you know, says the mind. And it was 11 years after, you know, being with this man, 11 years. And I finally said, I have to go. And he understood, which I was very grateful for, and he gave me his blessings, you know, and I'd had his child even by this stage. And I have to go, because this is no longer true for me to be in this, living like this anymore.
You didn't have a problem that you would take your child together with you?
No, he didn't. He knew, because our love was strong enough in the eternal that he knew that I would always return this child to him, you know. And that is what happened. Every year she went and spent summertime, you know, 2 or 3 months, you know, with him and the other wives. So that, he was not afraid of that. He trusted. There was a bond of love that was so deep that there was a trust there in that, and a respect. And he could see that it was time for me to go. I think he didn't want me to go, and he didn't like that I left.
But he knew.
But he knew.
But he knew.
And I was about 1 year alone, and I got very, very sick. This is the other thing that happened for me after leaving. I got terribly, terribly ill, and as did my daughter. So we fought for our lives for like about a year. We had.
How old was she at this time? How old was your daughter?
2 years old at this time.
And she got so sick along with you? Wow.
Wrong. We had a black fungus on the roof of our home at the time. And this black fungus went into our lungs. And we were just constantly sick. And I just had energies attacking me all the time, sucking at my life force, you know. And it was a very powerful time for me, because I felt like I was fighting for my life, you know. And I was I turned to this because prayer was a big part of my life at that time, you know. I carried this pipe. It was a medicine pipe, which is a very long, like a smoking pipe. And I did a lot of prayer at that time because to carry that pipe meant that you had taken on the responsibility to pray for humanity, for the planet, etc. And at this time, I was outside of that family, completely alone in a way. And so I was doing a lot of prayer. And I remember praying for my love to come into my life, my next man to come into my life, who could truly, truly see me, you know, like, because I was so open by this stage as a woman, you know. And I prayed for this man to come into my life. Well, be careful what you ask for.
So, but before we go to him, because that's the guy in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Before we go to him, I just want to ask you, because a lot of the people in our podcast audience are very interested in near-death experiences. And I know that you had a near-death experience when your daughter was born. I don't know what you saw or how that experience impacted you. And didn't you have 2 near-death experiences?
Yeah, for sure.
And I would say they would contribute to your abilities, because usually people come back with something magnified within them, or with a knowing in some way.
Actually, I wouldn't say that was true for me. Definitely the knowing was. I wouldn't say my experience was amplified, like my singing gift was amplified by this stage, because it was already in that state of experiencing quite a lot of power, you know. You know, my near-death experience, I was 40 hours in labor with my daughter, and because of my hip condition, my hips were so swollen, my legs were so swollen, and my cervix wasn't dilating at all. And they wanted to give me drugs and things, and I didn't want to do it. I've been holding this pain for 40 hours by omming.
Wow.
Now, I didn't have the full access to Om that I have now, but I used that power to hold the pain. And then finally, my support crew had a couple of wives around me at the time. They said, give up, Peru, just give up, just surrender, stop trying to hold the pain. So I did. And I started to kind of go out of the body, you know, and I saw my soul of my child, you know, and I would come, and it was like I was coming out and in of the body, you know, and I would just drop out for some time and then a contraction happened, I would come back in again. And it was a very powerful experience, because I really understood very much that I needed to die. Something inside of me needed to die. And it was the next, I would say for me, what this death was about was the next level of my ego. That's what died in me through that birth. And eventually I came, at one point they were calling me back into the body, and then they were saying, come back, you have to push this baby out or you're both going to die, you know. And so I remember coming back into the body, you know, and then this almighty power came through me. So actually, now that you're saying this, now that I'm saying this, I realize I experienced the absolute feminine power of the universe, and it roared through me, just like, you know. And I know other women have had this experience in birth too, you know, where you are so much bigger when you are unified with this enormous feminine principle. And my baby birthed, and I made it through, you know. And this kind of opening, I think it became very much the basis of showing women how to totally let go of the control of the mind, no matter how much pain they're in, you know, physical, emotional, it doesn't matter how much pain, to let go of control and totally go into the deepest surrender. And when they do that, they have access to this infinite power. And the voice is the bridge between the soul and the body. And that's what I truly discovered was that when I used my voice in a totally wild, surrendered way, where I'm not there controlling it, this power that came to me was enormous. It was the same power I had touched in the healing ceremony, but I hadn't cognized it the same way because this time I was alone, right? And this also became very much a part of the practice for women, because what I realized was that woman on the planet, this pure feminine power she carries to birth life has been shackled, right? And her throat has become shackled because for a lot of women, our sexuality gets shut down.
And and people go to control us.
And people control us. So we have experiences like rape, use, you know, and in this moment, we come up out of the body, the throat closes, we can't speak, we're cold as ice, right? So consciousness is just barely there. It's there because it's watching, but it cannot do anything. It's frozen, right? There's a link that is broken and she cannot say anything, or she can, it's muffled, like, you know, like this, you know? And so I found working with thousands of women around, because I've worked with women from 63 countries now over these last 25 years, that it's a consistent pattern, this shackling of the throat, this shutting down of the throat energy, where her sexuality, which is a flow, as I said, it comes up through the body, up through the vagina, up through the yoni, and this is a flow of love. When she gets assaulted in any way, whether it's verbally, physically, but she's in that deep state of fear, this closure happens here, and the closure happens in the sexual body as well, right? And they're totally intertwined. And it often happens also for women in birth. That's the other place, in the birthing room, where she is silenced, you know, where she's drugged and through the birthing process. So this full power that she's supposed to have access to is silenced. And so birth is often induced, or the cervix opens in a way that's induced, or she does it more silently, or she doesn't experience this full cosmic opening that she's supposed to experience in the birthing space, because she doesn't feel safe. A woman cannot experience this power if she does not feel safe, because this power opens in the power of presence of love only, right? A woman's pure, orgasmic, sensual, big nature, and I'll call that her big nature, because she's much bigger than just the small conditioned woman we've become. This energy only opens in the presence of love, you know, when it's opening through the body. It can open when we're out of the body, right, through near-death experience, but then you're not experiencing it through the body. There's a disconnection. When you in the body and the sexual energy opens in the body, or the birthing energy opens in the body, she starts to understand, who is she? She's a big woman. I remember
and you can really understand how people try to shut that down because it frightens them, especially the patriarchy. You could really understand that.
Absolutely. And so you can see, you know, that conditioning globally on the planet, this shutting of this energy. And I'm by no means a feminist, but I know the truth of that. So my position in the world is not to fight against it. It's actually to show women the key to switch that or open that energy back up in the body, so that they start to experience the sensuality, the sexuality, the power of that big open kind of wild woman that's been made very into a good girl, very small, very nice, you know, very conditioned, how she holds herself, how she behaves, where she puts the focus of her energy, you know, constantly into her image, etc. It's all part of shrinking that big feminine nature down, you know.
And actually taking away her power. Taking away her power. So I want to ask you, speaking of power, because now I want to go from that near-death experience to this New Zealand experience that you had, because that opened you up even more. And that got you, that really got you in touch with women's sensual nature and their inner essence. So that developed even more. And then I want to go to your high-low overtone singing, because by now our listeners are like, wow. So tell us a little bit more about that experience and how that evolved for you.
Yeah, I won't stay on that for too long, but just to give people a window, you know, I remember I was calling this prayer. I'm saying, please send me my light. He who can see me, who can see my big feminine nature, you know. Well, it was yet another extraordinary experience. I told you I was very sick at this time and my back collapsed. One of my discs popped out. I couldn't walk. I went to a friend and he was an acupuncturist. And I just made it to his door and I said, I can't walk. And he said, okay, Peru, lay on my couch. You're going to be here for 3 days. And he worked on me every day with needles, with acupuncture needles, opening all the meridians, taking all of the inflammation out. I had a lot of fungus in me, obviously, that I didn't even know about at this stage. And at the end of 3 days, he said to me, Peruquois, there's this guy I want you to meet. He's a really extraordinary man. He's had a realization of of who he is. He's also had the realization of the divine feminine. And he's really mastered something very powerful. And by the way, he also has more than one partner. And I thought, oh God,
here you go again. And this guy was from New Zealand, so you were going right.
He was from England, and at this stage I was in Australia, and I said okay to my friend because I trusted my friend. I said okay, I'll meet him, you know, and he was giving some talk in that city. He'd just flown in, and I'm there with a hot water bottle on my back, and I'm just in the healing process. I'm quite vulnerable, and I walk in. And this man is at the door, and he turns out and he looks at me and he says, Peruquois, you've come.
And he knew your name.
And I was like, how does he know my name? You know, did my friend tell him about me? And then I found out later that I had been in a spiritual festival, right? I was performing in England at the time. This is years before, 2 years before, 3 years before. And I was on stage actually with my husband at the time, the Native American. We were chanting together. I had a band on stage. And this man was in the audience. This enlightened man was in the audience. And some of his women that were around him had met me in the toilet. Now, I don't know any connection between the women or him or anything. He doesn't exist for me yet, right? One of the women came to me and said, we listen to your music and it's amazing. So by this stage, I'm back already out in the world. I've made a whole new kind of music about consciousness, about sensuality, about restoring this connection to the body, to love, to the earth, etc. And they're listening to this music. She says, we listen to your music. It's amazing. Thank you for being the voice of Mother Earth. We're so grateful, you know. And apparently, in that moment in the audience where I was singing, this voice of the mother had said to him, she will come to you. And when she comes, you are to take her on, right?
Wow.
So, and he turned around and he said, Peruquois, you've come. That's what he meant. But I don't know any of this yet, right? And again, I meet this man, and in the break, I'm chatting with him, you know. And it's as though I get the same sensation as my first husband. Like I've always known this man somehow. Like I know everything about him somehow. And at the end of his evening, he says to me, you know, I can take that pain out of your heart, because I had a lot of pain in me. I was physically in pain. I was in the pain of having left this relationship, etc. And he hugged me. And he didn't take the pain out of my heart. And I thought, okay, you charlatan, you know. Nice pick-up line, you know. But the next day he rang me and he said, I'm inviting you to lunch. And then I said, okay. And he said, actually, I'm not just inviting you to lunch, I'm inviting you to love. I was like, okay. Pretty direct, you know. Now, I live in a pretty wacky world, so not much phases me at this stage in my life. And now I'm about 32, right? And so I have this lunch with him, and I end up sleeping with him the first night, which I would never normally do. But this calling is so deep in me. And remember, my back's still quite sore.
Yeah, in spite of all that, right?
Right. All of that, you know. And he makes love to me in a way I've never experienced before. And the next day, my pain was almost gone. And my body was shaking from side to side like this for about 2 days. And my Kundalini had woken up.
And
so
tell everyone what Kundalini is. Explain to them.
Yeah, so basically Kundalini is that life force, that sexual life force that sits at the root of the body. Some say it's at the root of the spine, but I think it's at the root of the entire, you know, of the sexual center of the body. And when it opens, you experience enormous orgasmic energy. Like the orgasm just goes and goes and goes, but it doesn't stop. The bliss, the pleasure, and the body is shaking, and every cell is spinning, you know, in this very cosmic way, where orgasms are going on for so long. And then often, even after lovemaking happens, and it doesn't necessarily happen in lovemaking, by the way, it can happen in meditation as well. This energy just keeps claiming you. It's like you just keep spinning in this beautiful elixir of orgasmic energy. And it's very powerful. It wakes up your consciousness, your mind. You can see more clearly, and there's so much love, you know, so much love. And this is what woke up in me. And again, I was in this situation where something in me said, run. After he left, he went to New Zealand, I think, to tour over there. And something said to me, don't go there, just, you know. But the attraction was so strong that I had to go there. And we ended up coming together. So we were together for 4 years. So I'm kind of cut this story short now. Of course, he had more than one partner. He's very open about that. And he had children to 2 of those partners. And
he was what you call a tantric master?
Yeah, I would say that's a way you could call that. When somebody realizes the great feminine principle, and we have to understand that when we speak of the great feminine principle, the universe is not separated, it is unified. But there are the polarities of feminine and masculine. And she is totally unified with him, and he is totally unified with her, and they become one. That's what we call one, right?
Right.
And that's the whole point of being in the body, where we have the polarity inside, he and she, right and left side of the body, right? The upper and the lower, the heart, the vagina, etc. So we're built this way. We're built from, you know, the play of the cosmos, you know, of he, masculine principle, and she, the feminine principle. And then we get to experience it in the body with a man and with a woman. And the point of that is to bring that into such a state of love and union and acceptance, because let's face it, we're messy human beings. You know, we have a lot of conditioning and rubbish inside of us. The point is that love transforms each other's pain, suffering, grief, etc., into such a state where we understand that we are unified inside and with each other. And that's what happened for me, I would say, in this love with this man. And then the next thing happened for me. So tantric is somebody who has had this state of total unification. They understand that they live in a very sensual world, and that is flowing through the body, and they know how to direct that energy through the body. Some people can direct it towards other people, some is just for themselves, you know, some is towards their partner. It works in different ways depending on, again, the qualities that people are birthed in with, how that energy manifests. But it's the unified energy of he and she, right? And right. It's in love. It's in life force. It's power. It's pure power. So because of these years, you know, of again going through the next level, as if I thought that I'd gone through it all with my past marriage with these women, but no, there was more healing for me to do, you know? There was more conditioning for me to undo in myself. And eventually I really came to this point of total love and acceptance of these women, of him. And it came to this point where it's not about them anymore. It's not about being with this man or burning through this conditioning with this woman. It's about coming totally into this union inside where there's so much love and so much beauty. And I realized I did not need to even be with this man, and that his pathway was different, because my pathway was the pathway of following that vision to help many, many people. And I could not do it whilst I was with this man, because
But
his
things
path,
he taught you, and things you experienced with him, like opened the door for you to what you eventually were to become, right? So he was an important person who had been presented to you on your path.
that's exactly correct. It was like, again, he was another key for me, you know. I knew what I was calling for, and life kept sending all of the keys that I needed. And you maybe can understand from just listening to a little bit of the story that it wasn't easy. You know, it was like, on the one hand, like with him, I was experiencing incredible, profound states of cosmic lovemaking, of beauty, and just my feminine energy just flowing like water, you know. But on the other hand, it was really, really difficult, you know, being in this multiple relationship. And it's certainly not something that I'm an advocate of. It was just something that it was part of my journey, because my journey was, how can I help women? You know, eventually, first of all, it was for the voice, right? How can I help to heal people? But then it grew deeper as I experienced more of my own healing. And I got to see more and more through the years of working with women. How can we help women transform this ugliness, this cruelty that she carries inside, this grief she carries inside, this pain she carries inside, to be more herself, and to be that inside, that woman who is in her beauty. She's connected to her love. She loves her body, you know. This is a transformation.
And that has to be a challenge, because a lot of women do not love their bodies, and they're conditioned to feel that they are lacking because of whatever flaws that they have. And then a lot of time, and listen to attractive man, that's exacerbated because you're supposed to look a certain way and be built a certain way, correct?
Exactly. And I started to then see the viruses that have gotten inside of woman's body. And those viruses have been very carefully crafted to get inside her body. For example, this feeling of we're not enough, and therefore we need to always be doing and buying things, you know, to make ourselves better, cosmetics, creams, working out, the gym, you know, clothes, anything, procedures, facial surgeries, God knows what women do to themselves. Why? Because there's this virus inside of them that says you're not enough. And it's constantly, it's like, like she's like a dominatrix, dominating in her mind, constantly telling her she's not enough, she's not enough, she's not. And that is fostered by the world consumer economy. As long as women feel this way, women are going to be 70% of the consumers of all these goods that are made on this planet to keep her buying. And if women don't realize they have this virus inside of themselves, then they are at the mercy of a very powerful machine. And that is the consumerist machine, you know, that's constantly selling to her every time she goes into the world in any way, shape, or form, switches her phone on, meets somebody, goes into the street. She's constantly being messaged, you are not enough, you are not enough, you are not enough, you are not enough, and you need more, you need more. And it's this thing that makes her very unsettled inside, you know, and there's no peace inside, not this feeling of like, this is what it feels like when a woman is really rested and accepting and in love. She feels her body and there's a sense of, I'm so happy to be in my body, love in my body, you know, there's a sense of peace in there. And she'll feel inside herself this movement of time, this cyclical hormonal movement in her. And she'll see how that hormonal movement will affect her emotional world. And sometimes she'll feel open and beautiful. And other times she'll feel, I just want to be with myself. And other times she will feel like so much power and energy. And other times she'll feel so tired and she just wants to rest. And this is this natural hormonal cycle that is built into her body. And it's not wrong, you know, and so it's not like building a perfect image of woman. It's understanding she has this love, but she has this cycle moving through her all the time. And she's changing every minute. Every minute she's changing her perspective, her seeing, her knowing, her feeling of life is constantly moving and changing. And sometimes it's deep and still, and sometimes it's erratic, and sometimes it's powerful. This is woman's nature, you know. And so this virus that we carry inside, which is just one of many, but it's one of the dominant ones, is one that has to be transformed. And part of that transformation is she must reclaim herself. And part of reclaiming herself is reclaiming her own voice. Because why? That is the bridge, the vibrational bridge between the soul and the body. If a woman does not restore this connection, it's like she's not rooted in the body fully. Something is she feels too unrooted, unstable in herself, you know. And of course, the point of deep, deep lovemaking or orgasmic lovemaking is that it roots her in the body. But a lot of women can't get to that place because this is stuck, because the sexual energy has been blocked and locked
So
down.
talking about the voice, right? We're getting to the voice.
That's
so
right.
Through the voice, you have a healing power in your voice that heals women.
Yeah.
And it's a unique high-low overtone singing. So can you segue to that so we can understand what that is that you do to help women open up their immobilized throats?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is how it worked for me. First of all, I started to compose a lot of music that helps to rebuild this connection to the body, to love, to life, you know, to dance, because it's a very important part of woman experiencing her body, and men as well, actually, through the dance. But the voice is that vibrational key. And for me, first of all, you know, I spoke about the experience of having that energy rising up through my body, through the earth, and this powerful vibration. Many people called me the voice of Mother Earth because why? Where did that come from? It came from people sitting in the audience or being in my workshop and them getting direct sensation through their feet, through their vagina, through their womb, and the heart opening and flowering and the whole body shaking sometimes, and goosebumps and flooding of tears and things as they're listening to the music that I've, you know, created. I have 10 music CDs, so I've created an enormous body of music to support people who are waking up. Wow. You know,
we're going to find out all about that too soon, to find out how they can access them.
But then the next level happened for me, and I first tasted it when I was about, I think, 26, when I was with that first husband. And I had this psychic come to me one day, say to me, you know, you have carried this healing voice throughout all your ancestry, and you had it very powerfully when you were in the time of Atlantis, which is a previous cycle on the planet, where there was a civilization a lot more advanced than where we are now. A lot of your followers know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And she said to me, you know, this voice had the power to sing so high it could kind of split glass, or it could shake illness out of the body, and you're going to have access to that again, you know. Well, by the time I was about 27, I was praying on the mountain, I was singing on a mountain, and my voice did this very strange thing. It was like I was singing one note, and then the next note appeared on top of it, like this. So here's the first note. Ooh, right? You just hear one note. Ooh, ooh. You hear the second one now? Yeah.
Yes.
So this is that was when the first like split happened, and I thought I was only I was hearing, and I thought I was making it up. But I went to my sister wives at the time and I said, "Can you hear this?" And they were like, "Yes, yes, yes, we hear it. It's amazing." Like, well, I called my husband at the time, and then he said to me, "Peruquois, I forbid you to use this voice. You're not allowed to use this voice. You don't have the power for this. You're not ready for this. I forbid you to use it." And
oh my.
you know, it was really devastating. And I was so angry about it, but I put it away. I just pushed it down, you know, like, okay, all right, I have to DJ, you know. Well, I put that voice away for about 15 years, more or less, that exploration of that voice, put it that way. And then it started to wake up again. And first I woke up with a vibration of Om, and it woke up in connection to my meditation. So I go into deep states of meditation. And then I would start to sing as I came out of these meditations. And this voice started to split again. I was like, oh, wow, there it is, you know? And then the next extraordinary thing happened for me. A friend of mine, and he made some of my music videos, very talented man. He was very disturbed, very, very disturbed man in his psyche. He'd done far too many psychotropic drugs over the years, and his mind was not in good shape. And he ended up, I was supposed to see him this evening, and he ended up jumping off a building. He committed suicide. And his wife told me that he was very disturbed and he felt he had a demon inside, and he was so afraid of it that he didn't want to hurt his wife, etc. And so this, whatever it was inside, it convinced him that he should end his life, and he did. But when I looked into his soul, I could see there was a fight going on, because it was right after that I got this call, right after he jumped. And I could see there was a battle going on inside of himself for his soul, you know, like that there was something there that was very dark and very ugly. So I went in again into these deep meditation states, and I started to sing for his soul. And this voice opened up and it split like into these very high overtones. And it started to shake and spin. And there were like 2 or 3 voices spinning. And then all of a sudden it just, it's a very hard thing to explain, but suddenly I felt the soul break free, you know? And I understood that he was free, and his wife called me. She said, "What just happened? I just feel this enormous love," you know? And that was when that voice really woke up. And so that was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And then I started to, this voice wanted to express compositionally, you know, so I started to compose composition. So I'd come out of meditation, and I understood that this voice had the power to open different centers in the body, as well as open the connection to the soul. So I started to make compositions with this voice, and I went into the studio. I would just get the engineer just to hit play for me, and I would just let it come. I wasn't I wasn't orchestrating. I was just letting the voice intuit itself. And I created a whole composition to open up the heart energy. I created a whole composition to open up the womb energy, so which is very deep, powerful, low, with undulating overtones, like second, third voice, moving like this. And and then those those compositions wanted to be used by people. So I created practices, and I started merging the practices I'd been creating over the years with these voices. And so they became active practices like meditations, but there's some movement with them. Sometimes there's singing with them, where the person who's in the practice is singing with them. And then I thought, okay, they need to be accessible to a lot of people. So I made online courses some years ago to open up the womb, to open up the heart. And already I had been working with another aspect of the voice. And, you know, I spoke about unshackling the sexual energy, the energy of the womb, of the throat, that a lot of women carry this grief inside, right? And so I created soundtracks where, using my voice and music, I would take people deep into the body, and with the practice as well, where they could go down into the womb and meet that pain, and use their own voice and my voice singing them with them to release that pain, to release that grief that they could not release in the moment, often because they didn't have the right support and they didn't have the safe environment or the right guide to be able to help them.
And you're basically a guide. You're a guide to help them heal. Yeah,
exactly. And it's profound what happens for people to release that grief, you know, through those practices. So I actually have a course on my site.
Well, how about describing some of your courses and events, because you're coming here, so let's have people and know where to find you.
Yeah, for sure. And then just one aspect of that healing voice. Of course, I'm a performer as well. I'm an artist. So I brought that voice to the concert stage, and then I started to marry the practice with that voice. So I would do a concert, say a 3-hour concert, I'm currently doing, where half of it I'll be singing songs, and that's where people are experiencing a lot of opening in their body, goosebumps, tears, etc., a lot of realization. Second half, I'll take them into a meditation, and it's an active meditation where they open the heart, and I'm singing them with these high harmonic overtones, you know, and the whole heart, and people open, and people go into these deep states of meditation. Whether they can know how to meditate or not is irrelevant, because I use wonderful technology to support. I'll use surround sound. Sometimes I have 6,000 people in a concert hall, you know, going into these states together, you know. Amazing. And it's really profound. So I have 2 ways in which I work with the practices in the voice. One is the online platform, where there's like about 14 courses, I think, available for women. There's one for men, but I'll get back to that in a minute. But available for women, and it addresses the whole, everything I've spoken about. It addresses all of it and more. There's a course on how to heal and open up your sensuality, your orgasmic energy, to release that pain stuck from sexual traumas and things. There's course to release that grief and to bring that sense through that grief course back into total union, where the heart opens so big that you start to understand there is a big love, this huge, intelligent love that is woven through our planet, our entire universe, and through my heart. And that love is the thing that connects me to all that I've loved, all the people I've loved and lost, all the people I love in my life. You know, when that heart energy is wide open, I understand that I'm woven from this fabric of love. And then you start to learn how to communicate, you know, through other realms with this love to life itself. That's a very powerful for your audience. That grief course is a very, very powerful course, but it's woven through many of my courses because it's fundamental healing with the voice, of actually opening this channel, getting this life channel from the sexual center all the way through to the soul and get it flowing again. So it has its purpose. There's a course, for example, on how to wake up your calling. Because if
how to
calling your life path, you know, what you're here to do.
Find your purpose, yes.
Yes, very important for us, because if we don't have that, then we feel like we're a little bit a boat on a, without, you know, we're on the sea and we're a little. I have courses on how to deal with different emotions, anger, fear, etc. I have courses for patient, how to deal with that good girl, that virus of not enoughness, you know. There's one song, for example, I have on YouTube called I'm Not a Good Girl. And it's a very powerful song for women to listen to experience this sense of will. Because if our, you know, I spoke earlier about will as a child and how I woke that will up through that experience. Many of us, because of the pressure on the world right now and our personal lives, our will center gets low. When we are very hurtful to our souls, or when we're in grief, our will center gets low. The thymus energy gets very weak, just here. And this, the thymus is very much about that passion for life, our immunity and all of that. And the heart that says, yes, there is love and there is goodness here. That all gets very weak when we're in grief and sadness.
Well, you're just exactly expressing why it's important for a woman to heal that grief, right?
Absolutely, because it happens on so many levels. And grief is hidden. You know, sometimes it's about a birth where we had a very disempowered birth, or we aborted a baby, or we lost a child through miscarriage, or we lost somebody we loved, you know, or all of that often gets stored in the womb and in the heart. And this grief has to be released from the body, or it creates closure and heaviness. And then that is the next step of that is often sickness.
Yeah.
You know, physical sickness.
Absolutely.
And then that leads to physical. So it's so important that we take responsibility for healing that deep pain, that deep grief in the body, you know, so that we can get that flow of love flowing back. And the flow of love keeps you young, you know. I'm 52 and
look what you, oh my goodness.
I do practice every day. I do feminine meditation, which is also on my site. And I've been through all of these kind of practices I've created because that's how they got here, you know. And this is what keeps you connected to that youthful fabric of life, you know. So it's very, very important that we deal with this energy. When we deal with our grief and our pain, our soul becomes much more connected through the body. So the body becomes more bright because the soul is infinitely bright, you know. So the body and the soul united becomes more bright, more alive. Doesn't mean we don't go through hell. Doesn't mean we don't go through some emotional chaos. It doesn't mean life doesn't challenge us, but the resource that we have inside when this healing has taken place grows infinitely. So yeah, so this is all, there's a whole platform on my course.
When they go to find you, Peruquois, do they look under your name, or do you have a phrase that they go for? Is it, I mean, you know, what is your website? What is the listing of your website?
The website is peruquois.com. And Peruquois is first spelled like Peru, the country, and Qua, like Iroquois Indian.
Right.
Qua, right. French spelling. .com. And they'll see there's so much inside the site because there's the music side, there's 10 CDs there for all kinds of things, for birthing music, birthing babies, making love, for dancing and things. The other side of the site is that there's about 14 online courses there. And there's one course there that's for men and for women. And that course I created as a response to COVID when people went to deep anxiety. And I used this healing voice and this particular practice to raise people's will center up, get them out of anxiety and fear, and then restore that healthy flow using that special voice. That course is a 15-minute course. Imagine you can turn, hundreds of thousands of people have been through this course. It turns that deep kind of painful, low, fearful, anxious state into one of, I'm here, life is okay, life is good, in 15 minutes, because I've had to, over time, learn how to compress time so that my practices are efficient in a short period of time. I can switch the psyche and the body connection in a very quick time frame.
Wow, that's incredible. I want to ask you also, I know you're in Thailand now. So when are you planning to come to North America?
I don't think I'll be there until next year now, for sure. It will be late year, I think, before I make it into North America again. So I'm on a bit of a world cycle at the moment.
You have any idea where in North America? We know you've been in New Mexico. Are you going to be touring all over? You don't know yet?
I don't know yet. We're just building that connection. And, normally I go to the bigger cities if I'm going to go
New York, Chicago.
That kind of, I imagine that will be the pathway that I tread when I make it back into America again.
It'll be very exciting for us all to enjoy you and to heal with you. Really, truly.
I'm very excited. In the meantime, really get so much from meeting me online, because I think one thing I really learned was being a live performer, being a live facilitator in the workshop room. I had to learn how to translate that vibrationally across the energetic field of the internet. And that's something I also mastered in learning how to work with this modern world,
Like I did say, you're a remarkable woman, Peruquois. And I also want to ask you, because you've stated that you believe that meditation can help a woman find joy in life. Why is that?
I think, for me, it's about when we come into meditation, for me, it's not just meditation. What I created was feminine meditation, because so much of the meditation we've been taught on the planet, whether it's through the yogis or enlightenment pathway, is about really coming up through the body and going beyond the body. But for me, feminine meditation is about coming down into the body and really experiencing the body and releasing these blockages. Voice is a part of feminine meditation for me. So it's about releasing the emotion, the pain that's stuck in the body, and then dropping into a state where the body becomes so soft and so fluid that she starts to experience how big she is. And when she starts to experience how big she is, she then experiences a sense of enormous beauty, enormous love, peace inside. And from that peace, there's a flow. This feminine energy is not just still, it's always flowing. Look at our nature, it's always flowing. That's our nature as women, we are flowing. So feminine meditation is about getting that very juicy flow of love in the body. And it makes you young, it makes you connected to your body, to love, to that inner knowing, that intuition, So this is the point for me about the practices I created for feminine meditation, not just about going beyond the body. That will naturally happen when you get very big, but about this reverence and this acceptance of all the sickness and awfulness that's in the body and releasing it so it can come into healing.
That certainly would bring a person joy. I could certainly imagine that. Peruquois, you are a privilege and a pleasure to introduce.
My dear, I really, really enjoyed your generosity of heart, your brightness.
Thank you. We see each other, and it's a blessing, and it really is. And it's such a pleasure to share you with everyone in our podcast audience. I'm very thrilled to have you here. women from 63 countries have experienced huge personal healing breakthroughs through your courses and your workshops. And now you will be bringing your amazing gifts to North America. Please let me know, because I can let people know about that. And as far as I can see, you're a luminous light shining bright for all of us. And I want to thank you from my heart for this unforgettable interview today. And here's a loving reminder.
Yeah.
Here's a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you're watching on YouTube, and you will want to see Peruquois, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click subscribe below so you'll never miss an episode. Thank you again, Peruquois. As I like to say, to be continued. Many blessings, and bye for now. And to be continued. Thank you.